So this presentation is about custom Hoffman enclosures by Schaedler Yesco. I'm Mark Stremmel. I'm the director for Mod Center Solutions here at Schaedler Yesco, and this is kind of my bailiwick back here. So what we do is we supply and modify enclosures for almost any industry. Food, beverage, oil and gas, wastewater, water, data centers, the whole way down to industrial automation. Some highlights of our modification program. Obviously, we stock a lot of Hoffman enclosures. If you go in our warehouse, we have a long aisle, but also we can expedite Hoffman enclosures in and we can modify them. Some highlights of the program is a lot of people ask me, what's the Mod Center? And what it is it's a specialized CNC that we can put a whole enclosure or the mounting plate in. We can take your CAD drawing and we can actually cut all the penetrations in them. We can cut stainless, whether it's 316, 304 stainless. We can cut painted steel, fiberglass, polycarbonate, all those enclosures. We have all the mills and drills to do that, okay? Modifications also include drilling and tapping the mounting plate. So if your back plate, if you have a layout for that, and we can actually even help you with that, we can actually drill and tap that for you. So when you get the enclosure, it's ready for your technicians to start putting your wireway, your DIN rail, terminal blocks, and all that on. If you look, and when we're finished, if you'd like to see our booth, it's right over here. You can see we have a box there that we cut. You can see the quality of the cuts. So it's very repeatable, and that's right over by the Hoffman. It's right across from the Rockwell booth. The Mod Center is also capable of cutting holes and penetrations in wire troughs and other steel and aluminum plates. So it's not just enclosures and plates. If you have a wireway or a wire trough for construction, any type of box like that, or if you have a steel plate that you want to mount devices on for wiring or for adding plumbing or any mechanical items, once we have a CAD file, we can actually cut that for you. One of the things we talk about is the window of the machine. A lot of people ask us, well, how big of an enclosure can we cut? And there's actually two different specs. There's the flat side, which we can cut up to a 92 by 94 inch flat piece of steel. And enclosure-wise, for a cubic type enclosure, obviously, we can cut 93, 86 by 78. So rather a large enclosure. And we have a gantry that we can move things around. So we know how to maneuver it and that type of thing. And actually, at times, we cut all 6 sides. So that gets to be interesting. And actually, that's a picture of the machine there if you wondered what it actually looked like. That's it. Accuracy. I'm always asked about accuracy. Well, there's two things really when you're talking about the Mod Center and cutting is accuracy and repeatability. The accuracy is 0.04 of a millimeter, so it's pretty close. So, and actually, it's hard to even get better than that because if you look at the edge of the enclosure, the edge of the enclosure is not any more accurate than that. So to try to get better than that, it's not going to happen. All of our business that we requires an approved, signed off CAD drawing. And that's what we do to execute an order. So you'll work with your sales professional that you work with now. If you send them a CAD drawing, what we'll do is we'll take it, we'll quote it, and then we'll get you a quote. We try to turn the quotes within 24 hours. So once we get an order, we'll make sure that we have the final signed, approved, dated drawing, so we make sure we have the right rev. Because we have repeat customers now that even we may cut the same enclosure for them, but they have 6 different drawings for it, depending, it's just the same, but, there's this extra little hole or there's this extra little operator, a little widget. So we need to make sure we have the drawing. And actually, when we file it under the customer as enclosure / the drawing and even / the rev because it can change. Right? So we schedule all of our business weekly once we have an order. And we review it and we modify additions and our customer priorities. So if you call us and say, hey, you're cutting 3 boxes for us, but this other one we have a priority on, can you move that ahead? As long as we know within a week, we can move that around in our schedule. Once we actually schedule for the week where it's a little bit hard to modify, but the week before, if you let us know, we can juggle things around for you. The other beauty of our system is, too, because we stock so many enclosures, we've had customers that have called us and said, what do you have in stock? Because I have something I need cut real quick. Could you turn it? It's like, well, if you're a little flexible and can use something that we have in stock, we've literally taken it out of stock, got their drawing, got the order business taken care of, cut it, and had it on our truck that afternoon to the customer. So it's possible. That's not our standard, but it is possible we can do it. So again, request for quotation. What you'll see when you get your quote from Schaedler Yesco, you'll see a Mod Center Solutions, or a SYD Mod Center by SYD custom holes. It'll look like that, and that'll be the block where you'll see it in your quote, where it'll have all the pricing and everything on for the Mod Center cut only. Because you may have a quotation that has the Hoffman enclosure, the mounting plate, and then the modification services, and then it may have other devices. So if you look for that verbiage, that'll get you right to the cut. So what's required? We require your name, the contact information. And it's a common practice for someone in our team to call if there's any questions or we need a clarification on something. Or sometimes when we get to drawing, when we put it in for our format, we look at it, we'll find some other stuff underneath the drawing that we got to clean up a little bit, because if not, this will cut that. So it cuts what's on there. So sometimes we have to clean up the drawing. So once we have that, we can generate the quotation. Again, we also need the enclosure part number, and we need the mounting plate number, because sometimes we'll cut just the enclosure, sometimes we do the mounting plate, sometimes we do both. So we need to have all that information. And the important thing, again, is the approved CAD drawing and with properly scaled dimensions, because sometimes we get them and, well, the dimensions aren't exactly scaled right. So that's when you would get a call from one of our team members and say, we see something here that doesn't look right, and we want to make sure that we're all on the same page before we cut it. Because as you know, once you start cutting it, you're cutting it, right? So after the PO is received, our team member will review, again, the drawing, and we'll look for any anomalies or anything that, like I say, I call it dirt in the drawing, where we have to clean that up before we cut it. And then we'll schedule it based on the ability of the availability of the enclosure. So if we have to order the enclosure and it comes in, our standard lead time is basically 2 weeks from when we get the steel or the enclosure in. If we stock it, we can cut it 2 weeks or less. And we're trying to improve on that, but as our business is really ramping up, and as we build up capacity, and actually we're looking down the road at possibly a second machine. That's how much we're cutting. So again, the standard lead time is 2 weeks. So before machining, we'll thoroughly inspect the enclosure. We'll inspect the mounting plate. We'll inspect the gasketing, everything on it, because we certainly don't want to cut an enclosure if we see anything, especially stainless steel. We'll look at it with a different color light so we can see scratches and that type of thing. Make sure there's none of that before we go cut it. And if we do find an anomaly, we'll pull another one for stock, or we'll expedite getting one as quick as we can. Before machining, again, we carefully inspect it, then we'll fixture it on the machine and we'll cut it. After machine, we'll thoroughly clean and degrease it, because if you look, and in fact, I invite you to stop at our booth. We have a video that plays that shows our Mod Center in action, and what you'll see is this thing spitting out cutting fluid on the tooling all the time. So when it's done, we have to clean it off. So we degrease it, If it's stainless steel, we degrease it, we take a stainless steel polish it, we clean the mounting plate, whatever's required. And then what we do is we track every cut, whether it's just a simple mounting plate or it's an enclosure or both. We'll actually generate a serial number with our machine number on it in a day, and that gets affixed on the inside of the enclosure, or if it's a back plate, we put it on the back, just because you probably don't want that shown on your back plate. And then we'll generate a report that it's inspected, and the hard copy of that report is sent to you. And then we keep it internally. That way we can track everything. So it's completely inspected. It's signed off by two different people, actually the machine operator, and then our shop foreman also signs it off as well. And again, this is a little bit about that. And again, the scan of the report will be maintained by us for our internal system. So the other thing is we repackage the mounting plate and enclosure in the original packaging, and we also will put a drawing label outside. So if it's say a CSD 303608 enclosure and it's drawing ED blah, 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 what we'll do is we'll put that drawing number on the outside of the packaging, because often we have customers who will have us cut multiple enclosures, and again, they're all the same, but they're all different. The cuts are different. That way you can look at it and say, oh, okay, this is this box. I'm ready to use that, and you know what you have. So we'll repackage everything as much as possible. And then the beauty is we put it on our truck and it's shipped by our professionals. So what are the benefits to the customer? Well, if you do the math, 1 hour of our machine time is equal to about 8 to 10 hours of doing it manually, okay? And one of the things we find, and our customers often tell us, is they can redeploy the people they had cutting boxes to do other value things within the shop, maybe mounting components, maybe wiring, maybe testing. You also get precise, clean, and predictable cuts. And predictable, repeatable is really the word. So if you're an OEM and you're building 20 of one box, they all look the same. Every cut is exactly the same. And again, I would invite you to come over and take a look at the quality of cut, because you'll see, I mean, you're not going to cut your hand. Everything's completely deburred. We make sure it's just right. So again, consistent cuts for repeating projects and OEMs. You don't have any metal shavings. We make sure that we vacuum and clean all the metal shavings completely out of the enclosure. Improved safety, you don't have to worry about it. And also efficiency. You know, one of the things years ago when I owned a shop, I always dreaded the call from the shop foreman when he came in and said, well, you know that $5,000 stainless steel enclosure we had? Well, we had a little problem. The guy made a mistake on the door, or maybe cut the door upside down. Well, that's a little bit of a problem. And if it's a continuous hinge enclosure, they're not fun changing if you've ever taken one off and put them back on. So that's what I have for you today. If there's any questions, I'll be around afterwards. I'm also at the booth, and I'll be there all day. And again, please see the video. You can see an example of the enclosure that's modified. And thank you for listening.